Hello everyone, this is Charlotte and this is a podcast called Chatting in Cars. It's where I talk about irrelevant topics to your life just because you like listening to white noise while you work, probably. I do talk about random topics. There is a disclaimer at the start of this podcast because I do talk about sensitive topics, so if you don't want to hear anything about that, you can absolutely turn off now. I won't be offended, I won't be outraged, I won't go full Karen. That's okay. You're alright, I still like you. Anyway. I hope you're not a people pleaser. They have their uses, come on. Anyway, so the topic for my trip on the way home, I've just stopped off at the shops and I picked up $1 bottle of some kind of fizzy drink. That was my mission. Actually, my mission was to drop off a parcel, so. But the topic for the way home is the value of silence. Now, before this, I did the value of being alone. Now, the value of silence is just as important. Free your mind. Calm your mind. What is it Bruce Lee says? I've got to think about it. I do love his little speeches. Anyway, so the value of silence. There's an immense value to the silencing of your brain, if you can, unless you're an overthinker like me. There is an intense value to anyone who can sort of stop their mind rattling in order to sort stuff out. It's the best thing you can do, really, as far as I'm concerned, because in silence is when you're going to find your best intuitive thoughts, when you're going to be able to clear all the clutter out that's in your brain. No noise, no overstimulation, no nothing. You can just sit and think and figure out what you want to do with your life, sort of thing. Maybe if you're having an existential crisis like I periodically have. There's nothing wrong with silence. People are afraid of it. I don't know what they're afraid of. I would assume, and this is an assumption, that it's being confronted with things they don't want to think about or don't want to hear or don't want to have to think, that might counteract their belief systems or, horrible experiences that they've gone through or something like that. But silence is probably the best thing for curing all of those negative things that I can imagine, because it helps you come to grips with what happened. You can reassess the impact that it had on you. You can find ways to mediate it, to counteract the negativity associated with anything that was bad that happened, and work your way through it, which I think is fantastic, to be honest. I mean, it's just my humble opinion, but, as an introvert, an autistic introvert with PTSD, silence, it can make and break you, I can tell you that. Some of the things I remember, and they only come to me when my brain's absolutely relaxed, which is not always a good thing. And when your brain's just slipping off to sleep, or maybe you've been asleep for a few hours and you assume your brain is calm, and then you wake up because you had some horrible experience in the past and now it's reliving itself back in your subconscious as a dream or something like that. Nightmares, I have them. I've screamed in my dreams. It's horrible, but I know that they're serving a purpose. And I know that they're valuable. I know that these are things I need to fix. These are things I need to address and acknowledge. There's horrible experiences happening. There's a lot of my childhood and things that I've just blacked out because I just don't want to go back there. And some horrible experiences. And you just got to deal with that at some point. And silence is the best way to address what happened and what you can do to fix it. It's not always a bad thing. It's like, I put it hand in hand with people who don't like being alone. Because if you're alone, then you will be facing silence, won't you? Unless you talk to yourself ongoing, like I do in my house. I unashamedly talk to myself. I love doing it. It's fun. It helps me sort things out. And I do have that sort of propensity to use echolalia, where I need to hear things out loud to understand them. It's not that. It's also mimicking what other people say to understand them, but yeah. But it is an extension of that is hearing your thoughts out loud, which is where the talking to yourself comes from. So if you ever talk to yourself, you might have autism. There's advertising, isn't there? But anyone who's sane is still trying to hear it from a third point of view. I mean, you could be listening to your inner monologue and saying, well, this doesn't sound right. Maybe if I say it out loud, then it will make more sense because I've heard it from a different direction or something. There's nothing wrong with silence. There was, when I separated from my ex-husband, a deafening silence in my life. It was deafening. Sorry, fizzy drink. I'm having a drink. It is Orange and passion fruit flavour with sparkling mineral water. Thank you, Woolworths. Got it for $1. I'm excited. A whole $1? Yeah. Right, sorry. My compulsions, my oral fixations. I am currently chewing gum to deal with that, but yeah. The silence, nothing wrong with silence. There was a deafening silence when I left my ex-husband because I had no sense of identity or what I was doing with my life, and suddenly my life dropped out the arse. So I didn't know what to do with myself. And on top of that, I had the stresses of having to work, having to deal with the breakup, having to, be homeless and try and pay off the debt and all this stress and not having any real support. So of course the silence becomes consuming, and we're afraid of it because it is a stony, empty feeling. There's nothing wrong with it though. You need to embrace that. I know, and you're saying, what the fuck? It's horrible. It's a negative feeling. Why would I want to do that? I hate that shit. It makes me feel funny and I don't like it. Ugh. Strangely enough, that's how I feel when I go out in public. But, if I can deal with it, you can. Being alone for me is probably the opposite of what you guys feel when you go out in public. I embrace being alone. But it's you need to be comfortable with it, just the same as we need to be comfortable with pain. Pain is inevitable. We're going to be facing pain the entire time. You're going to be facing the empty silence of your life at some point, and this is the point where you jump off and you start re-examining what you want to do with your life. You've got to feel it to know it. You've got to, and some people never feel that stony silence. They never go through the dark night of the soul. They never feel like, I have nothing. I have nothing. I have nothing. It's like I have nothing. You need to feel it. It's enlightening, to be honest, because it's a complete clearing away of everything that is this crap, things you've built around yourself, band-aid solutions to try and make sense of things. The band-aid solutions, of course, being that you've tried to, or habits you've picked up to try and understand the trauma that happened to you. So you've sort of, just to numb the pain a bit, you've picked up, say, drinking or smoking or something like that. It's the stony silence that will make you examine yourself. It's like holding a mirror to yourself. You're only stuck with the silence. It's an empty, hollow feeling. And it's not that bad. It's not that bad, actually. It feels, you go, oh, this is what it feels like. Okay, so what can I do with it? You should be always looking to utilize these things, these horrible feelings. What can I do with it? I know inside me, I've got a little bit of a rage demon. Now, the wrong thing to do with that would be to take it out on other people, obviously. Would never do it. Never. I could never do it. I could never harm a child specifically, for example, because I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of that, and I just can't bring myself to do it. I can't physically hurt a child. I might get a bit miffed and start raising my voice because I'm a teacher and I've got 30 to 1. But to physically hurt some child or an adult, I don't know, man. I don't think so. So consider the silence to be the same sort of thing. I know I've got a rage demon. How can I channel it into a better circumstance? I could, if I got, with my rage demon, because we've all got something like it. Some people got something different. You haven't got a rage demon, you maybe got a lust demon, or you got a greed demon. Someone's always after money, materialistic demon, or something like that. Everyone has got one evil at least, if not several, in them. That is human nature, to have something that you've picked up. In a metaphysical sense, of course, we call it a demon. Maybe in a biological sense, you want to call it chemical imbalance. I don't know. But we've always got something that we keep having to try and keep under control. Some people will plaster it with bad habits to try and ignore it, and just to keep it under wraps and not think about it. And I don't want to relive that, and that's a negative experience, and I don't want nothing to do with that sort of thing. Some people have gone through wars and things, and they've had to use things in their day-to-day just to cut themselves off from these horrible experiences that they have. Maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's drugs, maybe it's God knows what. I know a lot of people from the army who have PTS often turn to alcohol or strangely enough, sex, I find, to sort of create meaning in their life, because they don't want to face the silence. The silence will tell them that, yeah, maybe they've hurt someone, maybe they've shot someone, maybe they've gone through these horrible horrible, abrasive, intrusive experiences where you just didn't have any control over your life at one point because you were following someone else's orders and you were made to do things that you wouldn't morally agree with. And now you have trauma because of it, and your PTS fucks with you socially, anxiety kicks in, and you can't deal with anything that happens in your life because it's just too fucking much. It's too much. And the silence will give you the platform to face that shit. You have to take the silence. And some people go voluntarily, some people are forced into it. I was forced into the silence. I didn't have a chance. There was no way I was escaping that. Some people go monk and they go, I'm going off to Tibet and Nepal and I'm having a wonderful experience with some monks and I'm going to face my silence. I'm going to embrace it and become some wonderful blah, blah, blah. Like my friend Grace, she's lovely. She's a yoga teacher. Every now and again she fucks off to Nepal on holiday because she's going to go find herself. And I'm like, oh, isn't that lovely? Meanwhile, people like me, everyday Joes, having their life drop out their ass and they're faced with the stony silence. And you go, well, fuck, I didn't plan for this. And you won't be able to plan for it because you have a chance in the upright. If the world, I say in tarot terms, in the upright, I mean at the forefront, you'll get up front a chance to go into this willingly. If something is heavily apparently wrong in your life, you'll go willingly. You're given the chance by the universe to go willingly, which is what Grace chose. She's lovely. She gets to go off on these holidays and do wonderful things, and she goes willingly and she finds herself and it's all cool and calm, and when she comes back she's fabulous. Or if you leave it too late and you put it off and you band-aid it and you fuck around with it, it's just like a boil. It will fuck you up. The universe will go, well, now I'm going to make you deal with it. Here's the silence. Everything's going to drop out your ass. Don't get comfortable. This is going to hurt. And that's when you get the dark night of the soul. That is deep, deep, deep hermit road silence. You lose everything. You lose yourself. You're just floating. And I was floating for about 2 years. I was floating, just floating, do bare minimum, autopiloting everything. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't feel anything. I just knew I had this one directive where I had to get the fucking debt gone and a roof over my head. And that was my directive. I knew I wasn't going to get any support from anyone because they never did it in the past, so fuck it. I do it myself. That was the one thing, one little spark I had. I knew I could do it myself because I've always done it myself. I didn't have a chance to not do it myself. So unfortunately, from these horrible experiences I've had as a child and as a teenager and as an early adult, where you're seeking people to help you to get rid of horrible experiences, to mediate these horrible experiences, if you don't have it, you do tend to become hyper-independent and self-reliant. And some people frown on that. They say, oh, it's a trauma response. And you go, yeah, it's a trauma response, but it's a fucking good one. There's nothing wrong with that, mate. I would rather take someone with a trauma response than someone who's not been tested. I know that armor works. This one, that questionable. I don't trust that one. That one's a little too shiny for my taste. I want to see something with some digs in it. But if you go through the dark night of the soul and you've never been tested, and this is your first test, and it's your big test. Some people had such a soft life. They've never really had to deal with anything. So when shit hits, and it is big when it hits, especially when you're going through your dark night of the soul, you might go through several in your life. It's a life-changing time period, and I'm pretty sure everyone goes through it. Maybe not recognize it, but you will. It's like, wait a minute, this is going bad. Oh fuck, everything's going bad. Okay, fuck it. Do you embrace it and you start redirecting where you want to go, or do you fight against it? Because if you fight against it, it's just going to get worse. This is the time where you're supposed to be looking at yourself and saying, well, this isn't working. And hopefully you're doing it incredibly calmly. I remember crying a fuckload when I was doing it, spontaneously on and off, and I couldn't stop it. And I'd be sitting there painting a wall in this house I was renovating. If you listen to the last podcast, I was telling you about how I renovated my dead granddad's house, who died in the same year as my dark night of the soul. I had 2 grandparents die that year. Actually, let me set you up for the whole scene of this year. This was 1 year, yeah? There's a whole story. All right, January, I broke up with my husband, my ex-husband now. We separated Australia Day. That's around about 27th of January, I think. I don't fucking know. I don't pay attention. It was January. By February, my granddad died. So bearing in mind, January to February, January I was couch surfing. I left the home, shirt on my back, didn't have anything, and I was in debt already. February, my granddad died. That's pretty fucked up. We found his dead body face down in a pool of his own blood in the front room, and it's like, well, this is fucked up. Still couch surfing homeless, still in debt. Okay, this is pretty shit. By this time, my uni had also dropped off the arse. I just had to stop my doctor. I couldn't keep going with that. I was too much stress and I couldn't keep it going. I couldn't keep up with the study load as well as trying to work. And I was working as well at the time, full time, as much as I could to pay off this fucking debt that my ex-husband left me in. So by March, my nanny had died. Luckily and thankfully in her sleep, she had just gone peacefully. There was nothing particularly trauma about that. It's just like, oh, you've lost a nanny as well. It's like, oh, fuck, okay, all right. That was May, actually. That was May. That wasn't March. So February, May, still homeless, still renovating this house, still trying to get my shit together and deal with the fact that I just lost my life partner, who I assumed was my life partner, who turned out to be a selfish piece of shit, who was not monogamous. That's another element to add to it. It's not just losing someone like they've died or something. It's losing something and knowing they're still alive, still fucking you over emotionally from a distance this time with God knows who doing who knows what, you know? The ultimate betrayal, right? I took that personally. I am monogamous to a fault. I am committed to a fault, and I expect the same from the other person. But, you know, maybe that's one of my flaws. I don't know. Being committed to one person at a time. Some people are like, well, you just take it too seriously. I take relationships intensely seriously, deathly seriously. I don't give a fuck. If I am loving someone, I am loving them properly. And I'm getting a job done properly. I'm not half in, half out. I'm all in. Let's go. Let's do this. So I took it seriously, and I was with him for 16 years. He got me young. He customized me, everything. So I had no identity when I left that. So over the period of a year or so, I was just working. I was skint. I was dealing with grief of 2 dead grandparents within a month of each other, homeless. The stress that comes from that, working full time. Thankfully, I was also going to the gym at that point. I also had counselling. I signed up to a mental health plan thanks to my doctor because I just walked in one day and I was just bawling and I couldn't stop crying, and I'm sitting there going, I can't sleep. I'm crying all the time. I can't do this. I need something. And I wasn't saying I need drugs or something. I was saying I need help. Yeah, and the best thing she could have done was just sign me up to that. She gave me two. What is that sleeping one? Diazepam? Whatever it is. I took one of them and I didn't like it, and I didn't take the rest. I'm a Cadbury. I hate those things. Glass and a half, I'm under the table. I don't do substances, dude. I don't do any kind of substances. I don't even take that at all. But, you know, it was a help to me for that someone was willing to help me. Be it that it was someone I had to pay to help me. When all my support networks around me were fucked. You didn't want to know. I think they have this weird mentality that it's your business and you need to handle it yourself, sort of thing. That's the approach I'm getting. Because every time they bitch about one of my siblings' wives or husbands or something like that, it's always a case of, oh, well, that's their choice and they need to deal with it, sort of thing. Now, they didn't think much of my ex-husband. I fought against it because I'm like, oh, I love him, and blah, 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 you know? Because you do, and you defend your person because that's your person. There's something biblical about that because you get married and you, in biblical terms, there's some wordage where they say, oh, when a woman leaves the man or the man leaves, when a woman leaves her family, she cleaves to the man, or something like that. There is a passage in the Bible about that. I do remember, even years ago, back when I didn't have to, I wanted to, but back when I used to go to Jehovah's Witness meetings and Bible studies and things like that, I do remember certain passages in the Bible, and they do pop up frequently. Not that I'm Judeo-Christian these days, I'm divinist, so I look at all religions, and I like looking at everything. I want to know everything. But some things stick, and that's what I thought was the thing to do. I stuck to my person, even though he betrayed me several times over and, you know, fucked me a lot over in terms of trust issues and finance and anything like that. But I was customized from that relationship, and I didn't get a chance to formulate who I was and who I wanted to be and what was important to me, because I'd gone from the household of my parents who were telling me who I was and what I needed to do, and I was under orders and I didn't have a chance to think for myself, really. I'd gone from one situation where I was controlled to another situation where I was controlled, which was my ex-husband, and he did the exact same thing. He told me what to wear, who to hang out with, who I wasn't allowed to hang with, who I wasn't allowed to wear makeup, I wasn't allowed to do this, I had to eat this, I had to train like this, I had to do all that. I had no life of my own. And he got me young, and I was pliable at that stage, and he customized me to be what he thought I was, or what I should be, as the wife of a personal trainer. Which is horrible, because I had no sense of self. And even though I had my morals, I definitely dropped my standards to keep him happy. Not that I was ever, sleeping around or taking drugs or anything. He started drinking and taking drugs and things like that later on in the marriage. And that blew me off the stand, because I was sitting there thinking, this is a guy who goes to the gym all the time. He has so many supplements and things. He's always into fitness and health and all this stuff. And it's like, why are you suddenly doing weed and drinking? And I think, honestly, it was more the company he was hanging around with at the time, because by that time, I'm sure he was having an affair with some girl called Cass. I'm like, some bint he picked up. I'm pretty sure he's regretting it now, though. Dumb fuck. But I had no sense of self, so the silence that I was faced with when my life just dropped, and it just felt like it dropped. It snapped. Something snapped. Everything dropped. I had nothing to hold on to. I had nowhere to be. I had no one to be with. I had no one to cling to. I had no understanding of what I needed to do, because at that point I was just like, I need to get this bill paid, and I need to get a roof over my head. That was the extent to which I had. I had nothing. I know that was the main problems, and if we fix those, then at least it's the fucking start, right? A lot of people don't have that directive. Some people just sucked into jobs and lives and things, and they're facing this silence, and they don't get a chance to even blink to think about what they need to do, because they're so busy with their lives. And I find that might be a cause of what depression comes from, because you're faced with this silence whether you want to or not. Some days, sometimes. Sometimes you can medicate it enough that you just starve it off and you don't have to think about it too much. But it pops up at 3 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep. Yeah, and you sit on your phone and you go, oh, look, a distraction. But they're so immersed in their life and their 9-to-5s and their kids, things like that these silences never get addressed. They get suppressed. They get band-aided. No one actually deals with that shit. But I had nothing. I had no kids. I was working, but it was not all the time. I was stuck in this empty house, and it was a very quiet, cold house that I was renovating, my dead granddad's house. It was echoey. And so any sense of silence that I had in my inside was actually externally amplified by just slight noises in the house. And it was so deathly quiet. And I know why his body didn't compose as fast as it did, because it was fucking freezing too. Oh my god, that's so dark. Well, yeah, swings and roundabouts. It was good for him, I guess. But, it's pretty dark though. But, it was so definitely silent. And the shutters were down, and it was a dark room, and it was quiet, and it was cold. And I used to just sit there in the silence. Actually, I was laying on the floor. It was tiled floor, and that was cold too. And I would just think, and I would address what the fuck happened. Because I'm an overthinker. I try to assess all the situations, and I want to cover all the bases. I want to understand everything from every angle, so I know the full content of the situation. I mean, that's could be generalized anxiety I've got. It could be PTS because I'm looking for the threat. It could be anything. It could be autism because I'm hyper-focused on one thing and I want to understand it, so I have to understand everything about it. There's lots of facets that could lead to that. But it was stone cold silence, and it was cold floor, and I'm just sitting there on my back in the dark trying to understand what the fuck happened. What the fuck just happened? And from that you get to understand what you value. And you can battle inside yourself and figure out, was it the right thing that happened? What part did I play in this? What can I do with this? How can I change it to make it a good thing? Because you should always be aiming to make the silence a good thing. You've got to transmute that. Don't just settle with it and get bitter and angry and say, fuck it, I hate everything and everyone. That's when you die on the inside. You've got to transmute it into something positive, something growth-based, something that will build, something that will grow, like a phoenix out of the flames. This is the analogy I keep getting in the cards at the moment. These girls, these women, they're talking to me and they're saying, in these cards, you're just going to rise like a phoenix, and you should, because fuck it and fuck them, right? Get angry with it if you have to. My little rage demon inside went, I am so fucking angry with this guy, and I had a right to be. I'm not as angry as I was. Like, if you listen back to my first podcasts where I was dealing with this, it was only a couple of months ago actually as well, but I'm not as angry as I was. And I've gone through a lot more shit since then. So my little rage demon has been a little bit suppressed at this point because she's just happy to be free of the last asshole. So it's like, I'm happy, we got snacks, I'm in a nice apartment, and fuck you guys, I'm going home. So you've got to deal with that. You might be sad. Some people went the sad route. I had depression for a little bit, but it never took hold, so I was thankful for that. Because I know once you get sucked into that quagmire that is depression, you can be gone for weeks and nothing gets done. It's exactly like a never-ending story where Falcor gets stuck in the fucking mud. Was it Falcor? The horse? Yeah, that's the best analogy. Growing up as kids, you look back as adults and you go, fuck me, that's pretty accurate. How did they know to put that in the movie to represent that? I don't know. But it's true, you get stuck in there and you drowned. And I'm so glad I didn't get that. And I have so many feelings for people that get stuck in that. I can't imagine how horrible it would be. I just had a touch of it. People live in that. That's a tragedy. But you've got to get out of that. You've got to rise. You've got to. And you know what it is? The silence is also a catalyst for the ash. If you're going to be a phoenix, everything that's not needed, everything that caused you pain, and everything that was shit and fucked you up. Maybe the type of lifestyle you were living, maybe the habits you had, maybe the foods you were eating, maybe the people you were having to hang around because of this one person you decided to be attached to. All that's gone now. It's just ash. It's ash in the wind. Gone. Just gone. And that was one of the benefits of facing the silence, because you can start again. All the fucked up shit that you didn't like I couldn't stand his fucking family, my ex-husband's family. I really couldn't. South African. Oh, that is a particular culture which I could never get used to. It's a very arrogant culture as far as I can see. But that was my experience with his family. Could just been his family. But from this ash, you can actually rebuild. You can start growing things again. You can start growing things how you fucking want them to be. It's the silence the silence is gonna give you the soil to plant the seeds. That's what it is. It's that deafening silence, that hollow. But it grows stuff, because it grows thoughts, and it grows feelings, and it grows clarity. And you can start growing things out of this horrible, horrible existence that you just got dropped in or dropped out of, either way. And you can make it make sense to you, because this time you don't have to consult with anyone. Even if you are alone, you can make it whatever you fucking want it to be. I mean, if you look at Nietzsche, the Übermensch, you are the creator of your own existence. You are what you say your existence is. Everyone's got their own version and narrative and interpretation of what reality is. You are the person who creates that. You tell people, you be that. I wouldn't just go around telling people, oh, I'm this, I would actually be it. I would rather see actions than words, any day. But you get to be the architect of your own reality, and nobody seems to get that. With silence comes the clarity of defining what you want to be and how you want to be, and who gets to be included in your time, in your life this time. So when your life drops out the arse, not a bad thing. Not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's confusing and scary because it's unfamiliar, you don't know what you're doing, and holy fuck, I didn't expect this at all, I've not prepped for this at all. And as a person with autism, not being able to prep for shit gives me anxiety, and I'm like, fuck. But, you know, it will make you. It really will. It will make you, because you get to make you. And you don't have to put up with other people's shit. But the scary part is addressing the silence and facing the mirror and having to do things that you're not familiar with. And people will numb. They will be afraid of that, and they'll go out of their way to avoid that shit at all cost. And that includes taking up habits which are deadly, you know, drugs, drinking, sleeping around. Sleeping around is not necessarily lethal, I mean, unless you contract AIDS or something like that, but it is soul crushing. It will destroy you. You know that you can never get attached to people if you keep giving away for free. There's no depth there, and you become this empty vessel. You know, they don't understand that. They think they're living a carefree life, and in the end I know where it ends, because I know how, You never make any kind of connections because people become so disposable. And then they wonder why they can't connect with anyone because you've just made everyone else who was before them disposable. So it's a bang-on effect. It's a domino effect. That's a whole different podcast. I'm not going into that one today. But when people sleep around and say, you know, act proud about it, I'm like, you're an asshole. Don't do that. Why would you do that? It's soul crushing for the person who might get attached to you and you in the long term. You know, I mean, unrequited love is one of the most tragic things I've ever experienced, and it will kill you. It damn near kills you because it can last for years as well. It's not even just a case of, oh, it's a few months, oh, it's like a bad breakup, oh, I feel like shit, oh, I'm gonna get my hair coloured and eat some ice cream and it'll be fine. It can drag on for years. My ex-boyfriend, I had a candle for 15 fucking years. I used to mope around on campus waiting for him to turn up on the off chance I might see him, shit like that. And then I actually dated him and it turned out to be he was a complete piece of shit. But unrequited love, absolutely tragic. But if I had stopped to look at myself and try and understand at the time, and I was way too young at the time to understand any of this, I'm quite fucking old now and I'm looking back retrospectively. But if I'd stopped and actually addressed what parts of me are needing this arsehole to be in my life, because at the time he was a saint to my brain. He was the, you know, the cat's whiskers, bee's knees bullshit. He was the one. Why did I need this arsehole? Because I wasn't even seeing what he was doing to the other girls. And his favourite trick was he was with a girlfriend and he'd lure younger girls into the bed and he'd have threesomes with them. And it happened non-stop for like 15 years. He would go to clubs with his ex-girlfriend. And they would go out to goth clubs. They were still goth at the time. I don't know how. It's a bit sad at that age, but you know. And they'd bring girls home with them. And it was a bit Epstein, really, if you think about it long term. It's like, she would go out and she would get girls for him. And they would go home and they'd do their business. And then, you know, I don't know if there was any kind of breakfast afterwards, but, you know, it wasn't exactly kosher, you know what I mean? And these girls didn't know how he shagged, you know, and he's violent. He has a severe, I don't know whether he'll admit it or not, but he has a hatred of women and he takes it out on them sexually. And I've been on the tail end of that and it's violent. And that's one of the reasons I had no trouble leaving. I was like, there's only so much I can tolerate under this one candle that I had for him. And he snubbed it out himself with his actions. It's everything that I had formulated in my brain about what this person was, suffocated, just smothered by his actions and actually interacted with him, which is the clarity I needed. And I should have just faced the silence in itself and seen what kind of a person he was. But even when I was with him, I was in denial and I kept band-aiding it and saying, oh, just brush it under the rug and it's all right. And I was just going through some trauma and it's okay. And it's never okay because he was, in hindsight, abusive. And he shagged people. Sorry, I'm just getting rid of my gum. Sorry. And he shagged women like he hated them. He did. If he didn't hate them, he was fucking close. There was no concern for my welfare at all. He had no consideration of boundaries. He coercively raped me at least twice, even though I said no and I pushed his hands away and things like this. And he just has no respect for women. And if I had taken myself aside early on in the relationship, like I should have done, and addressed the silence I was facing about the relationship, and it doesn't happen as a dark night of the soul all the time, sometimes it's in sections. Maybe you'll just have part of your life compartmentalized as, you know, this is the area you need to address. I didn't address it properly. I should have looked at it clearly and said logically and objectively, this is what he's doing to you. Do you think this is right? Is this in line with your morals? Is this in line with your version of what respect is? And if I'd done that earlier on in life, I swear to God, I wouldn't have gone back to him, because we broke up about 3 or 4 times over shit like that. Me saying, I'm not the girl for you sort of thing. You need to find someone who's in line with what you want to do. And every time he would come back and he'd be begging, oh, I've changed, oh, I've done all this. And I took him back and I'm like, oh, but a week later he'd be doing the same things, if not worse. Because now I'd taken him back and I made it okay that he was doing these things. So he's going a little bit further now. He'd go a little bit worse and he'd do something worse. And I'd be like, oh, Christ. And then we'd break up again. And it's, oh, but I've changed. And, oh, Christ. It was an ongoing cycle. In the end, I went, fuck this. And I left. I finally listened to that silence. I finally addressed it. And I grieved while I was in the relationship. So my silence came when I was sleeping on the floor of the spare room because I didn't dare go near his bed because I knew what he'd come in drunk like. I knew he'd take it as a come on. I knew he'd try something. I didn't trust him at all because he's done it before. So that's the reason my pelvis is fucked up right now. So, but of the two evils, I slept on the floor, and it was the right thing to do because I knew what the consequences would be if I'd gone into the bed. That was me addressing the silence. That was me separating from myself, separating him from myself, and saying objectively, this is not good enough for me. This particular area. Everything else was going well. My business is built up again. I was working again. I was out of debt. I was out of roof over my head for now until I found out that we were getting evicted on my birthday. And oh yeah, it's a long story. But that particular section, when it came to relationships, I had to separate myself and face the silence because I did not want to face that silence of this guy is not good for you. And I had to. Because it was a case of face it now voluntarily or face it later when it's really going to fucking hurt. And there's no band-aids to put on that fucking wound. And it was the best thing I ever did because I got a nice apartment now. I'm not being sexually abused. I'm not being treated like an option. I'm not being cheated on. I've got my own money. I'm not wasting it on him. I got my own self-respect back. I got my sex drive back. I tell you what, after that amount of sexual abuse, that roughness, you lose your sex drive. It's like you're cowering at the end. You don't want anyone to touch you. You don't want it. I know I've now got sexual trauma from him, even though, you know, my cousin did the same fucking thing when I was younger. But, you know, I've got that sex drive back, and I tell you what, I'm grateful for that. I bought myself some presents. No, we're not going there. Divorced women, we know what we want. But, you know, it's that sign you have to address, and it turns out for the best, because you can reformulate who you are and what you value and what you say is good enough for you. And if you look at someone, this person he never did tell me he loved me. Never once, 2.5 years on and off. Only when I left did he start saying things in emails like, oh, I miss you, or oh, a boy that loves you still. It's like, who the fuck is this boy? You never actually addressed it and took ownership of any kind of emotion for me. I was just a thing. I was something to show off to his friends and shove in his friend's face. I was something to lure in other girls with. I know what he was doing. He was using me as a person. Why don't you go make friends with those girls and then, you know, bring him back, sort of thing. I know it was going. He's been doing it for 15 years, if not 20 years. He might have been doing it from the start of his dating era. But I started cluing on to what he would have wanted me to be, or what he would have wanted me to do. And I started going, I don't want to do this. I am not this person. This is not me. This is not in line with my values and my morals. I'm not going to perpetuate this. And I started, you know, with the help of his shit treatment of me, I started backing away. I started losing emotion for him. I stopped wanting to touch him or be around him or anything like that. And it was based on abuse and based on knowing that this is going nowhere. Knowing this doesn't align with anything I believe in or what I'm good for, you know, and I felt like I was being wasted on this asshole who was never gonna actually change despite saying that he wanted to. And you take all these factors into account, and eventually I just left and I didn't come back. The best thing that could have happened, and it sounds horrible at the time, was getting evicted, because it was an absolute break. It meant that we would have to go our separate ways because he moved in with his friend. He's a male friend that never seemed to fucking disappear and lived up his arsehole as far as I'm concerned. And I moved into my own flat, and it's been nothing but great since. I mean, it's interesting to work so much to make sure the rent's paid. But generally, it's sent me on a trajectory that's way more wholesome and way more supportive and holistic to my life and my values and who I am and who I want to be. And it's all because I faced that fucking silence and I was forced into it. I didn't have a chance. I didn't have a chance. Probably kicked off from finding the hair clip down the back of the couch and asking him, and him denying and lying, and just the amount of lies and bullshit this boy fucking came up with in order to keep shit rolling and to get what he wanted out of me. It was phenomenal, and it's just a compulsive liar. And I was crazy. And I'm sitting going, if you just told the truth, maybe we could get around it, but because you're not telling the truth, it's compounding the situation, and I can't stay, never knowing if you're coming or going, or if you're lying to me, or if you're having an affair, or if you're doing all these things. And I couldn't stay, and I just couldn't stay, and I stopped loving him. To be honest, I don't love him. I can't stand him. I wanted nothing to fucking do with him. And the more distance you create and more silence you sit in, and you understand yourself a bit better, the clearer things become. It's a bit like the Frozen song. You ever watch that Disney Frozen movie? She's like, now I'm out of the castle, everything's so clear, and I don't have to worry about everything, and everything's clear. And she's right, though. I mean, when that came out, I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. Okay, that's one way to look at it. But then you're actually living it, and you're like, fuck yeah, right, okay, man, okay. I agree, yeah, fuck this. Let's go live in a nice castle somewhere. Wait, hang on. Isn't that just a form of escapism? But, you know, the silence is invaluable. You can't put a price on that. And you'll be given the chance to choose to go into silence, and some people do. They go hermit mode. I recommend regularly going hermit mode and just staying with yourself for a while, not just shunning people. Just understand yourself a bit better and recharge. But then again, I'm an extrovert and a Hayoka, apparently, so I need to recharge. Some people get off on other people. Some people recharge by hanging around with other people. I don't understand these people. They're nuts. But the silence is invaluable for understanding self. And you get the chance to do it yourself, or you're going to have it done to you. So I choose the soft route next time, I think, if I can. It just gives you a chance to reform. You don't need to be afraid of it. There's nothing wrong with it. You're just going to be faced with some uncomfortable feelings, and uncomfortable feelings are as temporary as you make them. You can pass them lightly. You can go into depth in them to understand them a bit better. You can ask so many questions. It's introspection, and people don't seem to want to do that. I mean, we live a Instagram generation where everybody wants to put pictures of how fucking fabulous their life is, but it's all fake on their Instagram accounts, and say, this is me. And it's like, well, that's not you. That's the surface you. Or you've got celebrities who are beautiful celebrities, and they're always taking pictures, and oh, isn't their life fabulous? But then you find out in the background that their life's falling apart behind the scenes. But you don't see that because they only want to put the good PR in front. And you think, why don't you just tell us the truth? But then again, that's personal information, so why would they tell us the truth, right? It's not our business. Some people are private. I'm moderately private. This is anonymous, so I'm going to keep talking. So you can't pin it on me. I haven't done anything. But you know, silence is so valuable. You've got to embrace it, dude. I can't say that enough. Don't be afraid of it. We've all got it. We're all going to be forced into it at one point in our life. We're all going to have to assess our reality. Is it working? Is it worth anything? Can I do it better? You should always be looking to grow and further everything. It's all about enlightenment and ascension. Okay, I'm going to have to leave it there because I have to go pick up yet another parcel. I'm hoping you guys have a fantastic day. Oh look, Reddit. Oh God, more news. Sorry. Have a great one, guys, and I hope you have a relaxed week. Don't take anything too seriously, and I'll chat to you tomorrow.
So space, night, death, darkness, not being there, is an essential component of being. You don't have the one without the other, just as your buzzsaw has no teeth